Hello, my name is Guido, and this is my video project for Advanced Software Engineering at Florida International University, fall semester 2014. And in this video, I will be presenting iceScrum, an open source Agile Management tool. And here we go. iceScrum can be found by going to www.cagilum.com. This is the company that developed and maintains iceScrum, and they also offer several different pricing and planning options for iceScrum, including iceScrum Pro, which is the full-featured version of iceScrum, and as well as a cloud service in which they will host iceScrum for you for a price. So if you ever, this is very useful for when you have a team and you're just working out of your laptops and you don't have the office space or the server infrastructure to set up an entire agile management platform, and you just need, and your project, you need to start working on your project right away, and you need something to help you manage your agile development and to document everything. You can just host iceScrum on the cloud, and for a price, they will, depending on the size of your team and how many members, you can find an appropriate plan. Or if if you're a more established group, you can also pay for, you can definitely download iceScrum Pro, and for an annual license of €2,000, you can get the fully featured version, and it has a lot of great features, including source code integration with your Git repository, or GitHub if you have it on GitHub, and Subversion. So it just depends on what you're trying to do in your organization. If it's just a team of one, you might just want to. You can also just use iceScrum Cloud and just sign up for a free account with one project, one member. And this is the plan that we will use to demo iceScrum. And also, if you are feeling brave and you want to download the source code and install it yourself, you can always go to github.com/iceScrum, and you have the source code here, and you can definitely attempt to install it and host it, and run it yourself on your own network. And yeah, there's also that option, and that's if just depending on what the size and scope of your project, your organization is. I mean, you might have that resource where you can have someone set it up for you and you can host it yourself. So there are many options that you have with iceScrum, and you can pick the one that will help you the most and will get you up and running as quickly as possible. You also have the option of installing the iceScrum desktop's application. This is a pre-configured version of iceScrum that can easily just install, and it comes pre-configured, and you can just set it to run without having to go through the long manual installation process. However, this is not recommended for a full production environment, but it's a good option in case you just need to, if you want to run it for a small team, or even just run it and to try out the software. However, the install guide would be the way to go if you're in a larger organization and you have the resources in place to be able to take advantage of the software. And you would, for example, if you already have a database set up, you can set up iceScrum to interface with your database. You would have to install Tomcat and configure it. However, you would see a lot more performance benefits from it. And although the process is pretty long, it will, and depending on your environment as well, it would take a little bit of time and some knowledge, but in the end, for a full production environment, this would be the recommended route, or you can also try one of the cloud services. As the name implies, iceScrum is mostly designed for Scrum. Scrum is an iterative and incremental agile development framework used for managing product development. As the word agile implies a flexible approach, it tries to be a flexible, holistic product development strategy where a development team works as a unit to reach a common goal. Key principles of Scrum are, for example, the way the roles of a team change. For example, instead of having a strict project manager that both gets the requirements and dictates the tasks to be done, that role is split into two now. And what you have is the customer taking a more active role as a manager. Because what happens many times is that the requirements do change, and unlike for example waterfall, where you try to define all the requirements at the beginning, what Agile tries to do is it tries to accommodate what is called requirements churn, which is basically the fact that the customer will change their mind about what they want and need out of the product that's being developed. Another key feature is that it is iterative and incremental. In many cases, many parts of the product will be developed all at once. A team or several teams might be divided to, and for example, you would develop the back end, you would develop the front end, and then you might develop the server side code all at once, and you would then try, instead of taking time to design the back end, then the server side, and then the front end, you would set it up so that you would develop the first version of everything all at once and have a working version of the software. In Agile, you do have several events that do take place as part of the process, like a daily Scrum meeting. This Scrum is not just getting together in a huddle like in rugby. It is a daily meeting usually that discusses what's to be done for the rest of the day, and it discusses the goals you're trying to focus on now. And you might also have a sprint planning meeting, which is at the end of a sprint, is to discuss what's going to happen during the next sprint. It's also to discuss some of the things that came up in the last sprint, and then that's what might be worked on the next sprint. You also do have a backlog, whether we might call it a product backlog or a sprint backlog. It is a list of features that need to get implemented, and this backlog is made mostly by user stories. It's made by stories basically from the customer. It is basically what the customer feels should go into the product, and it's made up of stories, but not all stories make it to the backlog, and not all stories then become worked on during the sprints. And this is where iceScrum comes in, because iceScrum helps first catalog all those stories, and then the Scrum Master determines which story then becomes part of the backlog. And then in what iceScrum also helps with is that it also helps you set up what your sprint's going to be like, and what backlog items are to be worked on during that sprint. And that's the basic use of of iceScrum, because this is how you actually plan on what the next 2 weeks or what the next week or so of the sprint's going to look like, and this is how you slowly but surely bring down that product backlog. Now, to sign into the cloud-hosted site, you just have to go to caligum.com and just sign up for an account. All you really need is a valid email, and you just have to give them a username and a password, and you will be able to sign up for a one member and one team option. And I find it very useful just to be able to test the software right away, and without having to install anything. And yeah, this is the dashboard, and this is what you will see when you first log in. Right now, I haven't set up a new project yet, and we could do that right now. So now we can try to set up our first team. I'm just going to make a team called Miami Dev Group. And in our case, we're just going to have one team. And with one member, and I'll call it the development group based out of Miami. Or based in Miami. And right now it'll find me on the account. And I'll add myself, and then I'll give it a project name. And I always had the idea of making a site called My Local Brews, a site to track your favorite local craft beers and at your favorite local bars. Well, my idea was always, you might want to go, while you're going out, you might want to find a place that serves a certain beer, whether it's a craft beer or if it's just any kind. If you want to find a place that serves Yingling, or Blue Moon, you might want to find, you might want a list of places where that you can go that has that. It's a funny idea, but I always thought it could always be expanded. In this case, I would say, at least, a site where they can look that up, and where maybe, a bar or restaurant could themselves log in and then list out their menu. In this case, I would just add the name. I'll add a project key. And I'll just add a description. And local craft beers and local bar registry. And that was the idea behind the project. In this case, I just have to save the project. And here you can specify the start date, you can specify the sprint duration, in this case 2 weeks, and it built it for us. And now that we have a project, we can go ahead and show it. And to just overview again, this is the dashboard. This is the dashboard on iceScrum Cloud, and here's where you would have your projects, your teams and your projects. And if we had more teams and projects, that would be listed here, but for now we just have the one, and we will try to show it now. And here you would log in, and depending on your access, I'm the product owner and the scrub manager right now, so it would give me a certain level of access. Other people can log in and do certain things in the project. It does allow, for example, for the customer to log in and to add, for example, stories, or for a developer to come in and add a feature. So there is that access, and there are certain roles that can be set up in the project. And so we would, for example, whether I'm a customer or a developer, I might want to add stories. So I would go to the sandbox. The sandbox is where anybody can just add ideas, and they usually come in as user stories. So, for example, I would say, at the very least, we need a brew registry, or I would say a beer registry in this case, because, for example, we might want to have one for beer and then one for wine. Beer registry, and I would have it as a user story. A list of all the beers registered to the site. So in this case, I would just add a little bit of information about the story. I can add any attachments, and any more notes. And it could be anything. It could just be, for example, a user can come in and suggest, for example, social component, where maybe they'd want to be able to add, to share something on their social networks. So they might say ability to share site info on Facebook, Twitter, and in that case, they would log in. They would give a general description, and then it's up to the Scrum meeting to see what ends up as part of the product backlog. And then from the product backlog, you can go into the sprint plan and see what could be part of the sprint plan. Along with user story, you can also add a technical story or a story defect. A technical story is more along the lines of what a developer would write down as it would already be more of a feature of the software itself, and it would be it would have a more technical description. For example, if we wanted to incorporate RSS feeds into the site, so it could be RSS feeds of news about certain promotions and new products. So that would already be something a bit more technical. I mean, in this case, it would be more along the lines of maybe the implementation, what technology they're going to use, or how they want to code it, and also you do have what's called a story defect. And a story defect can be defined as a misbehavior of the software that is produced. It is a non-compliance with defined acceptance criteria expressed by the user, client, stakeholder, and it is not so much an error in the software as it's not an error like an error that crashes the program. It's more of an error of behavior. It's an error of scope of how it was developed. So In this case, it might be something that we might want to track and that we might want to describe and address in the next sprint. So after adding several items to the sandbox, you can see how quickly you can definitely list out all the things you need to do in your project, and this is where then the product owner comes in and decides what becomes a user story and what becomes a feature. And the sandbox is for anybody in the project to be able to log in and add potential stories, but only what the product owner or anybody else authorized to make that decision, only what they want to proceed as into the backlog or as a feature as well. You can also send something into the features list, and only those things will then be allowed into the sprint. And once you have a couple of stories in the sandbox, they will show up as post-its. Well, those show up like this and yellow, and any participants in the project will be able to view the details and comment on the story. Like this. You can add a new comment, and for example, they might just want to add something really quick. And it'll let them post, and it'll show up here. And then the next step is what becomes part of the backlog and the features. And that can easily be updated by right here under every one of these arrows. You can then just accept it as a story or accept it as a feature. Let's say this is a story. There's another story. So you can just keep on going down the list. And this is how you begin to set up your stories for the sprint plan, and I will show that shortly. And here we are in the product backlog, and these are the stories that have been approved by the product owner, including technical stories with the wrench on the upper right hand side. And also what you'll have is you'll have user stories and technical stories in yellow, and you'll also have features in blue. And you also do have the features list. This helps just to keep an idea, just to keep a list of features that need to be implemented in the software itself. And it's a good way to keep it apart from the user story, which is more of a generalization of what needs to be done. And in the backlog is where the team begins to estimate their stories. Here the team comes in and they can add a number here. This is what is usually determined in a planning poker. Planning poker is a consensus-based technique for estimating, mostly used to estimate effort or relative size of development goals in software development. In planning poker, members of the group make estimates by placing numbered cards face down on the table instead of saying these numbers out loud. This helps to avoid what is called anchoring, where the first number spoken aloud sets the precedent for subsequent estimates. And in the software, this is done simply by clicking on the question mark here, and you can just give it a number, and you can just go down the list, and anybody in the team can do this. And if you notice, these estimate numbers are actually Fibonacci numbers. It's a common practice to use Fibonacci numbers when estimating stories. However, this can be changed by going to the menu here under the project name and going to practices. And here you'll be able, for example, to change the default sprint duration, as well as change the type of numbers used for estimation. So now that I just jumped ahead really quick and I added the rest of the numbers, and now we should be ready for the release plan. So to set up a new release, we actually have to go to the sprint plan, and here we can go ahead and create a new release. Release planning consists of the association of stories from the backlog to sprints of the release. Only estimated stories are candidates for planning, and the sprint must also be created. It's possible to later on change the associations, meaning the story from one sprint to another. And for example, here we can call this release 1. And you can say first, as a release goal, first working release of the software. Hopefully. So we'll just add that, and so now we will go and try to generate a new sprint. And we will create the first sprint and just give it a name, and you give it a start and end date. And in this case, the dates are day first, then month, then year. And just give me a second. I can start setting up the first sprint, and then I'll also add the second sprint. And I'll make sure to get adequate dates for those. Make sure at least give them a week. And I'll say this is version 1. And here we are. We finally have some sprints, and we can finally start to assign tasks from the product backlog. So to add stories to a sprint, you just drag them in like this, and you just drag them. Right now I'm just dragging them in arbitrarily, but this is where a lot of planning by the team gets done. This is where a lot of it is, most likely the subject of many Scrum meetings, many sprint meetings, and this is where a lot of that gets done. And once you have a couple of stories assigned to sprints, then you can go straight to the sprint plan. And here in the sprint view, it displays all the post-its, and here's where we can assign tasks. This is where the team, has that, might have a sprint planning meeting during which the team will identify all the tasks needed to be done for every story. And to add a task, you just go to the drop down arrow and you just add a task. In this case, I'll just call it task 1, and I'll continue to add a couple tasks. just to get an idea of what it will look like. And here's where the team, fleshes out all the details about us, about all the things that need to get done. And also you can assign a color to each task, just to make it a lot easier to read. And right now you're pretty much ready to start your sprint. And right up here is where you can activate your sprint. I had activated it already, so it is now in progress. And here's where you can simply just drag a task over, and you can drag it to in progress, or once it's done, you can just add it to done. And you can do that for all your tasks, for all your stories in your sprint. And you can also definitely add a new task in the meantime. I'll add task 4, and I can continue to add another task 5. I'll add task 6, and I'll change the color. And there we go. That is pretty much it. So we can also just reassign a task to a particular story. And in this case, I'm just naming them arbitrarily, but this is where a lot of the planning goes in. This can be many things. For example, dividing it up into the precise technical implementation of this feature. This is where you can divide, for example, the bar registry. Someone has to set up the database, someone has to code the back end, and then someone has to work on the interface. So yeah, here we can also add more estimates for the tasks, and then you can just add a number, and then you can just view the detail, and it'll take it. And then now that we finally have some information in the system, we have some hard data to go off of, so we can now finally go to the dashboard, and then we can see a little bit of what we've done. And yeah, here in the dashboard we see a project indicator. It is shown as a burn-up chart, which basically shows the number of points total in the project that still need to get done. These points are basically the same estimate numbers that we've been putting into each task and to each story. And you also will see a list of activities, and here shows all the stories I've been updating, and as well as some minor project description and information. And that's pretty much it as far as setting up your first project in iceScrum. I hope this has been an informative video, and thank you very much for checking out my video and for checking out iceScrum.